All right, here we go. All right, so I'm Sockeye, and this is another episode of interviewing interesting people who do things in boats on the water. And this is Jonathan Harrison of Team the Pacific Boys. I call them that because I think Team is sort of the name that you had for the Washington 360.
That's right.
But and kind of the big accomplishment in Jonathan's life recently, I'm sure there are others, is completing the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge, crossing from the Canaries to Antigua, kind of over the winter, over from 2021 into 2022, as I recall. So Jonathan, welcome. And I guess I'd love to we'll hear a little bit about you first. How about that? Let's start with that. You're in Seattle, I think, right?
I am in Seattle, yes.
Okay, great. I'm on Salmon Island.
And I've been here for about 5 years almost now. I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada, so I'm not too far away.
Right.
Yeah, I'm working in tech. I work in procurement, which is thankfully one of the least exciting things about me. And so anyways, yeah, I'm a big cyclist. That's what I kind of grew up with. I've also grown up on the water. My dad owned a sailboat that we would go out on in the summer throughout my youth. So I really got close to the water through that. And yeah, I had this idea that I wanted to row across an ocean since about 2013, and then eventually it had to happen. So that's what I did this past winter.
Was rowing across the ocean, were you thinking about the race itself or just the idea of rowing across the ocean?
Mostly the idea. The original idea actually came because I read a blog by Alistair Humphreys, who's a British explorer who did the same row that I ended up doing approximately. He did it, I think, in 2012. And so at the end of 2013, I was reading about it and saw what he did and thought that's just really an interesting experience to have with some other people. So that's where it started for me. And then from there, it was discovering the Great Pacific Race with Chris Martin, who'd organized it in 2014 and then later in 2016, I believe, before I discovered the Atlantic Race, which I visited in 2018, and then finally participated in 2021.
Okay. And how did you choose the Atlantic Race as the one that you wanted to focus on?
Logistically, it was definitely more challenging, and I wish that there had been, at the time, because at the time there wasn't actually a Pacific Race being hosted.
Yeah.
There has been a couple of them since actually, and there's another one coming up soon. But anyways, or in 2023, I guess. But anyways, the Atlantic Campaigns race, because it is a race and it's run by a group called Atlantic Campaigns, was super well organized, tons of experience. The Atlantic is generally speaking a safer route than the Pacific.
Yeah.
The Pacific goes from Monterey Bay to Hawaii, by the way. They're almost equidistant, but the Atlantic is more frequented and a more established route, let's say. So from a sport perspective, from a almost a marketing perspective, the Atlantic Campaigns was an easier choice.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't do this alone. You did this with some folks that you know. But what's the background there? Did you know them well? How did that all come about?
Not at all. So this all started from scratch at the beginning of 2019. I just started reaching out to people through work and sending emails to people who were in affiliate groups within my company. So you could sign up for things like, triathletes or, sailors or, rowers, obviously. And so I reached out to those groups and said, hey, is anyone interested out of you to try this out? And, I got plenty of responses. I did a lot of interviews and met with tons of different people. And by the end of the 2019, I had a team together. And that's where it started. So it really did start from basically nothing. I didn't really know anyone who wanted to do this personally.
Okay. I don't know if you want to plug the company you work for, but it's interesting that you all work for the
Mm.
same organization. What company is it?
Yeah, we all work for Amazon.
Okay, you all work for Amazon. All
yeah.
right, cool. And within Amazon, you found two other like-minded folks.
I did.
Well, many
Yeah.
perhaps, but two that you
Many,
chose.
but it ended up being actually that. So I ended up with Isaac and Kramer were the ones who rode across with me. There were other people along the way who helped or were part of the team, because it was a long haul to get there. So they are the two that stuck around the longest,
Right.
whether they
Right.
liked it or not. No, but Isaac actually was a friend of someone who I emailed. So as Isaac actually doesn't work for Amazon, he's doing his PhD at UCSB.
Oh, okay.
Down in California there. So.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Friend of. Okay, cool. So what are their full names? Isaac and Kramer?
Isaac Mackey and Kramer Lewis.
Isaac Mackey. Okay. Cool. All right. And so by the end of when did you all come together? When did you kind of?
The end of 2019, the very, very tail end of 2019.
All right.
And at the time, we were actually thinking of doing the race in 2020. But
Right.
circumstances as they were, by March, we realized, oh dear, this might not be a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was on a boat in March of 2019 or 2020, and it was, the world shutting down and time to get home.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, well, that's an interesting twist. How did you then proceed?
Well, so we had bought the boat by that time, by March. And
okay.
so the first thing we had to do was, Isaac ended up going down to Antigua to check out this boat that we had bought from an Australian team who had rowed across the Atlantic in that year's race. And so he went down there, checked out the boat, make sure it was okay. And then we basically had to figure out how to get it from Antigua to Seattle,
right.
Which was extremely complicated. But thankfully we had some support. We got some sponsors at the time, and that would manage to help us get the boat to Miami, essentially. Well, I guess we got it to West Palm technically. And then we rented a Penske truck, put it in the back, and drove it all the way across the country for a weekend, which was interesting because the boat is 28 and a half feet long.
Right.
And so the largest truck that we can get is licensed, or obviously like regular license, but the biggest you can get is a 26-foot box truck. So it was sticking out the back by a little bit.
Oh, wow.
But we managed to make it work. We strapped it in, put some, hammered down some wood on the back just to make sure that nothing rolled out.
Right.
And we drove it clean across the country nonstop.
Looked in the mirror a lot, right? Make sure it's still there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is between you and I, but one of us would sleep in it during the drive at all times. So we felt it going over a bump where it's like,
so it's boat and crew member you don't want to lose.
yeah. If it's rolling out with one of us in it.
Did all three of you do the drive?
We did, yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, that's a good first 3,000 miles to do together.
Exactly. It was honestly a great time. I mean,
so two propelling the boat and one sleeping, and that worked out, huh?
Yep. 4 hours on, 8 hours off.
That's awesome. That's great. And no problems. It worked out fine.
Oh, it was scary as heck, but we made it. There was a snowstorm in Nevada, I think. No, not Nevada, Nebraska, and very icy roads entering into Washington. It was funny because all the other trucks, the real trucks, were putting on their chains and stuff, and we were just like, whoosh, we're gonna keep going. We didn't have chains. So and then it was great too because Isaac was saying like, I haven't driven in like 3 years. I'm like, what?
Jeez.
We're going through this mountain pass.
This is the one that's been in school.
No.
So when was it that you actually drove across?
That would have been February, March, I guess, somewhere right in that. It might have been March. It was right at the beginning of the pandemic. We knew that something was going on, but we didn't know. We were just like, let's just get this boat out of there before anything goes closed. But
I just did I drove cross country twice last year, not really wanting to fly, and my return in December was interesting and dodging weather. I mean, I was navigating my car like I do a boat, and it was just kind of bizarre. And I missed the tornado in Kentucky by a day.
Wow.
And then I weaved my way through snowstorms kind of out this way and figuring out which pass I would cross. I decided to go for I-90, and
Yep.
it was snowy. But
Huh.
so I can visualize that. I'm like,
We definitely considered sticking south and going, the long way around, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's expensive enough as it is. Keep it short.
sure, yeah. Wow, well, that's exciting in itself. All right, so then you get to Washington here. It's 2020.
Yes.
Isaac's got to be doing some of his work down in San Diego some of the time, but you and Kramer are around.
Yep.
And so how much work did you have to do on the boat, and how, like, when did you get in the water?
A lot. Well, the boat was ready to go in the water right away, pretty much, because
nice.
technically it was fine. I mean, it just rode across the Atlantic, so it was still working, but there was some stuff that we just didn't know, and I think we just ended up learning as we kind of tested it out, for better or worse. We spent 2020 doing a bit of maintenance, not a lot, enough to get some certain key equipment working, like our water maker, and making sure the batteries were all working properly, and some of the basic functionality, getting the auto tiller back and up and running, just so we could row the boat and train, right? Get the wheels kind of moving a bit more on the seats. But basically, we ended up doing mostly just local training with the boat during 2020. We did I think a 48-hour row and a 55-hour row. We went through Deception Pass, and we went around Lopez Island, back through Seattle. We were moored at what was the marina? We were at Ocean Alexander Marina down at the end of South Lake Union there with Affinity Marina.
So did you go through the locks a few times?
Lots, yeah. that was great fun, actually. It's a little challenging with the riggers sticking out, because we have a 6-foot beam, so the riggers are mounted to the side of the boat, but they still stick out a little bit. So it's kind of awkward because our fenders weren't that big. So it's like, well, we'll moor next to you, but just be aware.
Right. So just the span between the pivots of your oarlocks is a little more than 6 feet then?
Just a little more, yeah.
Okay. Just while I'm at it, I'm thinking about, how long are your oars?
Ooh, how long are the oars actually? I think I'm just trying to imagine it when I was holding it vertically. I honestly can't remember. There's a specific ocean rowing oar from Croker, but
okay.
Yeah, they're probably 9 feet tall, I guess, maybe. Yeah, it seems about right. Somewhere in that range.
So like 6 feet outboard of the pivot of the oarlock. Yep. Okay.
At least I'm approximating here, as I can't remember.
Okay. Cool. Well, tell us about this boat that you bought. I mean, it seems to be kind of the standard that folks go with. So what is it?
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's built by a company called Rannoch Adventure. They're based out of the UK, and they make 90+% of ocean rowing boats, as far as I've been aware. There are a lot of other companies that make them, including Spindrift up in Port Townsend.
Yeah, right.
The problem for us was just the money. We would have happily built with Sonia because of great quality, etc. We couldn't afford it, so we had to buy the used boat from the Australians. This boat had been across twice already, and it had gone around the UK actually. So the boat had some legs on it, which we'll come to later. But the boat itself, it's called a Rannoch R45. It's 28 feet, 28.5 feet long, 6 foot wide. It's got 2 cabins, bow and stern. It comes with the standard auto tiller. It's a water maker inside, solar panels, and the lithium ions.
Oh wow, you got all that.
Got the bilge, just got Ray Marines, all the stuff you need, AIS, etc. So
what's the 45 stand for? Because I'm not making sense of. Do you know?
It's a great question. I guess they also have the R25, for example, which is for like a 2 to 1 person rower. This one you could fit 4 to 5 people in the boat, or technically 3, as we learned. So it's a good flexible model because it allowed us to say, well, what if we had a 5th teammate? What if we ended up only having 3? Right.
Right. Okay.
Our original plan was to have 4 people, but it just ended up being that we ended up with 3 because times change, and it's a difficult thing to keep up doing all the time through. So.
Yeah. So did you have a fourth team member for a little while?
Multiple times. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you went from 3 to 4 to 3 to 4.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
that was probably one of the most challenging parts of the entire thing, was just trying to, get to the 4-person. We wanted to be a 4-person team because that's the most competitive class when you're doing the row, and it makes the most sense for the boat. It's really the most efficient way to row that boat, is to have
Right.
4 people on board, not 3. But we can talk about shifts in a while. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah. So but yeah, we went through a couple different teammates, and for variety of reasons, people would drop out, either just couldn't commit the time because it was a lot of time, or just experiencing the ocean and saying, that's just not, I just don't think I could do that for the 40 days, and that's totally fair.
So your test rows were testing the people as well, and was that
Very
what
much.
so you
Well, I
had
was also
like
testing team dynamics too, because I mean, the more difficult
Right.
situations we could be in, the more the more we'd learn. And I mean, like the 55-hour row is extremely difficult. For example, we encountered some pretty pretty nasty chopping admiralty, and we actually we had a close call with an oil tanker out there. It was
Oh
I mean,
goodness.
I'm glad that it was Kramer and I on deck, because the two of us had a fair bit of experience.
Right.
But obviously not enough to realize, oh, we could just turn on the AIS, which we didn't do. But we had the lights on, so they saw us and everything else. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's not something you want to see.
Did you have some words with vessel traffic?
We did. Well, we spoke to the pilot afterwards, because he could read the website on the side of our boat. We were that
wow.
close.
Okay.
And so we got a chance to speak with him afterwards, and we were very fortunate because he gave us some great advice and everything else.
That's nice.
on what we were doing, and also just curious because I mean, it's a weird looking thing.
Well, let's go there for a moment, because I've been out in slow boats for the last 30 years and have been dodging ships, and they've been dodging me. And what advice did that pilot offer you for somebody who's in chop? You probably weren't able to maintain your usual cruising speed. You're probably down to
It was extremely complicated.
1 or 2 knots.
For us, the challenge was we really had to cross the shipping lane because we were getting blown to the wrong side. We wanted to tuck in behind Whitby. I also wanted a place where we could go in case of emergency, in terms of just like get off
Right.
the water.
Yeah.
So that was our thing. I mean, the main thing was just make sure we were more visible. So that was having some kind of a radar reflector or having an AIS on board, which we did, which we just didn't turn on because we didn't realize we were just completely novices at the whole thing.
Right.
So we just didn't even think to turn it on, which we thought we had to reprogram it or something. We didn't.
Oh, okay.
So it was actually working. We just didn't know to turn it on. So that was the main thing. Also, just being aware of the traffic at the time and using the radio to communicate our intentions, etc. So from that point forward, we were. But
yeah. Well, that's really good advice, because
exactly.
with from the Washington 360, the same area, right? The start is there, basically Admiralty Inlet, and and then or for the race to Alaska, it's crossing over to Victoria, and it was in 17. Yeah, there's a lot of traffic. And I remember in 17, they want us to stay out of the turning. There's a spot of a buoy where they turn just north of Point Wilson there, and they said stay out of this zone. So we had a choice of going north of it or south of it, which basically you had to make a choice of going east or west of the lanes in the beginning, so that the current would carry you one way or the other. But yeah, and it's I've been there in the fog too, with a lot of ships going by, and it's
fog is a different beast.
That's really scary, and that's when you're really dependent on vessel traffic and communications. All right.
Yeah, I mean, you're lucky in Puget Sound, because you do technically, for the most part, have a signal. I mean, we had an iPad that we used that would we could check marine traffic among like deep zoom and other useful tools that we had on board. I think we used iNavX as well, but so just making use of those tools as they're available.
For following traffic, what did you prefer? You said you mentioned a few apps there.
Yeah. I mean, we just used marine traffic because it was easy. Easy to understand, easy to use.
Yeah.
We were also lucky because we had a sponsor called UgoWare, and they had this like iPad case, so we could have the iPad on deck. So it wouldn't matter if it was pouring rain, we could still see it. So that was a big plus. But anyway, we used that. So iNavX, although it didn't show AIS on there. It was just purely for navigation.
Yeah.
Again, it was free in the charts.
Yeah, no, that's
and then we
great.
used deep zoom for the currents, which was extremely useful. And I wish Deep Zoom was working in Canada too. That would just be
Oh, it's not?
not that I saw. I did check it because I was curious about R2AK for the to see
Right.
what that would be like. I was curious what the currents would be like going on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is good stuff.
I know just from my youth that there's some wild currents up there. So
Oh, yes. Oh,
it'll
yes.
be really interesting. I'm kind of curious from your own experience, because I mean that got us a couple of times actually. I mean, we were going through the Sonoma Channel, I think,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
we did it twice. We did once on the 55-hour road, we did, and we did it again in 360.
Right.
In 360, we barreled through. We were going 5+ knots. It was amazing. We timed it perfectly somehow. But on the other way around, on our 55-hour row,
Yeah.
like we actually had to anchor outside of what's the city or the town? It starts
At the
with
north
A.
end, Anacortes?
Yeah, we had to anchor outside Anacortes because it was thunder, lightning,
Oh,
and
goodness.
pouring rain, and the currents were against us. We were rowing for like an hour, and it was my shift. And at the end of my shift, I kind of looked over. I'm like, that light hasn't moved from the shore. It was like pitch black,
Yeah.
but it was like that light has not moved.
Right.
Are we actually moving?
Yeah.
And it was like, no, we're really not. So we ended up having to anchor there and wait for a couple of hours until the tide turned to our favor. But then we got stuck right at the very end of the Sonoma Channel. We were going like half a knot, 3 of us rowing as hard as we could, just trying to get out of there.
So you can row with 3 of you.
We can, yeah. There's 3 positions on board.
Oh, okay.
Which is why, again, it's really optimal for a 4-person team, because
Yeah.
you could technically optimize and have 3 people rowing at specific times.
Right.
But and we did both those rows with 4 people on board.
Okay.
Actually, we did the 48-hour row with 5 people on board.
Oh, wow.
just to try it out.
Right.
It was kind of cramped.
Yeah.
But with 4, it was pretty effective.
Yeah.
Still relatively cramped, but yeah. But we had to do 360 with 3. So.
Okay. And let me just ask, because I know the area, what does the boat draw?
Very little. I mean, without so the deepest part would be the centerboard if you put it in.
Yeah.
And that would take you to about maybe 3 feet.
Okay.
With just the rudder in, probably about 2.5.
2.5.
It also depends on how much you're carrying at the time.
Right.
So I mean, I think there's about, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches of variance based on
Yeah.
the load on
Okay.
the boat. Mhm.
All right. Well, the reason I just know there's a lot of sandbars at the north end of the Swinomish Channel, so to get anchored and off to the side, you could end up aground. So
Yeah,
No.
yeah. We were right outside Anacortes, like just past the ferry.
oh,
So-
okay. Oh,
So we
you're
weren't,
okay.
we weren't quite to the sandbar section. I know what you're talking about too, but
Yeah.
no, we were pretty far.
Because I remember running through there at night, and we were like wandering a little bit out of the channel, and like, oh, we better get back in the channel.
Yeah. We were thinking the same thing. It was still dark when we were coming through there, and we were looking for the buoys. Like, where
Yeah.
where are these things?
Right. Well, they're not lit up the north end there. You
Mhm.
got to light them up. All right. Well, cool. Let's see. So you've got your team. Did some of these folks that like the 4th and the 5th persons, did they end up being kind of your support folks that helped you later? Did they kind of
Yeah,
stick
some
with
did.
you? Okay.
Yes. Some did. I mean, we also had lots of other support as well in other means. Like, we got advice from Jordan Hansen. I'm sure somebody's heard of Jordan. No, he's an absolute legend. He's done similar rows across the Atlantic twice. So he's extremely well versed. It was extremely helpful. We also had a fellow named Nicolo Parizo, who out of Spain. He's been director of why is it escaping my brain right now? It's Friday, by the way. if that's an excuse, no. But Lord Almighty, the America's Cup. So
okay.
he has experience beyond any of us by many years in sailing, especially. He was extremely helpful in navigating across the Atlantic itself and just giving us general advice on working as a team, and especially helping me as the captain. So Nicolo was indispensable. And then we also had other advice from Shelley Guzman, a nutritionist, and many others. There's a bunch of people listed on the website too, but those guys especially. And then Mark Walters was our other 4th teammate, who was extremely helpful for us. just
Nice.
keeping us, you know, ready, especially in the 6 months leading up to the race. It was absolutely mayhem. But
Let's talk about the teamwork. I sort of understand that your role of being kind of the person in charge, but also that it's a team effort. What, I don't know, what lessons did you learn?
more than I care to count. I mean,
all right. Well, what I guess
like that was,
in the
yeah.
perspective of what advice would you give?
What advice would I give? My goodness. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things. It very much depends on on what kind of thing you're dealing with. Planning ahead is extremely important, and planning for contingencies and setting expectations, especially with the team. Because, I guess part of the interesting thing about this adventure too was I was just happy to find anybody to come join the team at the time, right? So,
Right.
I guess hindsight's an interesting thing. I would not change my team for anything, but also just make sure you know what you're looking for at the start as well, and who you want to bring on board, because it's a very particular thing. And it's okay to spend a fair bit of time building a team. That's super important. It's more important than I think anything else. But so taking the time to pick the right people and make sure the expectations are extremely clear. That said, in our case, we had no idea how much work this would be, or that there would be a pandemic, among other things, to add to the level of difficulty of the whole experience. It was also extremely difficult for us to pull in sponsorship throughout the entire pandemic. We did not get a lot of sponsorship in the end. So again, an expectation thing of, this might end up costing us personally a lot more than what we expected, which it did. But that was, that was okay in the end. But, it was just one of those things that it would have been much easier to approach from here's the expectation up front, be prepared for the worst. So in any event, there's so many different things to be learned. That's a big part of the reason too that I did this as a team, because I definitely thought at the beginning anyway, back in 2013, of what I could just do this by myself, right? And people do this row solo. But for me, that really wasn't the point of the adventure. I'd done somewhat solo adventures before. I cycled around Taiwan myself, and that was great. But that really wasn't the point. The point of this whole exercise was, the team dynamics and experiencing that, because you're trapped inside a tiny boat with with two other people. That's it. There's no escape. Well, I guess there is technically, but not with any reason, within any reason. So so you really have to be forced to make things work, and that's an exciting dynamic, and one that's you learn a lot from in a relatively low risk environment. I mean, all things considered.
Right. Yeah. Well, good. My team, we all know each other, but
that definitely helps.
And two of us we've worked together. I've worked with each of them for like a week and a half together, about that much. We're all outward bound instructors. So we were kind of involved with this team dynamic frequently, but often trying to facilitate it for others, as well as having our own. But we'll see. It's coming together quickly and fast here. And I think back to 2017, how we didn't get to spend, Ernie and Martin got to spend more time together rebuilding, doing some work on the boat. And I kind of came in fast and furious from work, and joined in, and we made it work. But it definitely is. It can make or break a team. In 2018, I got to drive a media boat for the race to Alaska up as far as Campbell River, and witnessed a team meltdown and end right there. And that was.
We've heard about it too.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things. I mean, in the end of the entire thing, it came down to passion, because, if you didn't have enough passion for what we were trying to do, you weren't going to make it.
Right.
And I mean, and that's, that's, we had that experience, thankfully, off the water, where, it just wasn't lining up, and, things had to change. And so it's extremely important to find people who are passionate, but also those who have enough experience to be able to say, like, I have delivered on this kind of thing before. I've, whether that's participated in some kind of team in some dynamic,
Yeah.
or, even just general, experience in life in general. But yeah, so especially because we're all fairly young, it was a lot of learning for everybody in terms of, in my case, leading a team like this. Because I'd been a manager before, but it's much more structured in work, right? This is completely from scratch.
And you get time away from each other when you're at work.
Yeah, also true. But yeah, so as far as other things go, we ended up spending, so we trained probably as a team together on the water. I think we almost cracked, like, I think 800 hours with me, Isaac, and Kramer together on the boat. And then I think we ended up spending about 1,000 labor hours on that boat between many others of us, not just the three of us, but including pulling in the girlfriends and whoever else was on the street who wanted to help work on this boat. But yeah, we did most of that work in 2021, right before 360. So 360 was like our debut of the boat in its like prime form, and it really was in excellent form. It still was even at the end of the race, actually, after the Atlantic crossing. Honestly, it did really well. I think that was one of the most interesting things about the both challenges. We really never had any technical problems on the boat, which I think is somewhat a testament to how much work we put into the boat. I think also to Kramer, because he had a lot of experience. He owns a sailboat that he's done a lot of work on. He's a very handy person. Like, he just put so much time into that boat and making sure everything was working properly, and it worked brilliantly. So because we'd heard horror stories of like, auto tiller failed, we have no auto tillers left, or the water maker fails, or all sorts of different things. The rudder snaps. Like, we were prepared for absolutely everything. We went through all sorts of different scenarios, everything we could possibly think of, everything we had read about or heard about, and we did probably over, I think we probably did like 50 different interviews with people, just learning about stuff, because a lot of ocean rowing is done out of the UK. The majority of the teams that race are out of the UK. The race organizations from the UK, the manufacturers out of the UK. And so if you're doing this from the UK, it's relatively easier to get the resources you need to do this.
Right.
Whereas us, we're kind of out in the boonies as far as it's very bush league out here, which is great. And we did get some really, really good help from a lot of folks who knew their stuff. But ocean rowing specific and the boat specific, we learned a lot ourselves. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's taken apart the water maker as much as we have, for example. Oof. I mean, we tore that thing apart down to the machined block, just to see how it all worked. Thankfully, we managed to put it back together properly. But we wanted to know inside out how that thing worked in case something did go wrong, because we could be able to fix it. Even the electrical, we tore it all apart and to the best degree we could understood it, because we knew we need to be able to fix it out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. What water maker do you have? And I'm curious if it's one that you could run manually if necessary.
We could not run that one manually.
Okay.
We definitely thought about what we would take, because we thought, well, what if the power fails somehow? Like if there's a battery fire. We had a portable solar panel, which we thought theoretically maybe could generate enough power to potentially, it's a Schenker Smart 30 water maker is what we had.
Okay.
It's a bit of an older model, I guess, but it is purely mechanical in the sense that it's got the piston that kind of moves back and forth, and so the only thing that really runs on the electricity is the water pump, just the electric motor. So theoretically, with 50-watt solar panel, you could maybe run it a tiny bit, but we did have a backup spare hand pump water maker that was very, very slow but did work, and we did test it pretty extensively. So
what was that one?
What was it? It's what's the isn't there one that's like the Swiss one that starts with a K? I think you know what I
Katahdin?
Yeah, it's
that's not them. Or...
I can't remember. It is, but I can't remember what the model is. It's old. It's very old. It was like from 2006 or 1 or something like that. It's an older piece of machine, but nevertheless, it's just a big hand pump thing. And the thing is, we knew if the water maker failed, it would be, instead of someone rowing, you'd be pumping water. just absolutely necessary because we needed about 40 to 50 liters a day to run the
Wow.
boat and everybody else on board. um, that's at the high end. I mean, we probably ended up using on average 30 a day, but we wanted to always have 50 on hand.
Right.
And that's just on deck. There was also another 50 liters under in the bilge that we just weren't meant to touch, only in case of emergency for the race rules. So.
Oh, okay. And so that was ballast basically, but also
Basically,
yeah.
But we also had the ability to flood the ballast and we had a bilge, and we did make use of that occasionally to keep us from capsizing. We did that once. We at one point we flooded our lower. This is advice from Jordan Hansen actually. We flooded the bottom so that we wouldn't capsize. It was at a time where we were rowing one on, one off because one of us was just basically not functioning super hot for a period of time there, just for some medical reasons.
Yeah.
So this is like the roughest time of the entire row. I think at the peak craziness, and it wasn't overly crazy all things considered. I would say, but I think the highest wave we would have seen would have been about 12 feet tall.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound huge, but sitting in that boat, it felt pretty big.
Yeah.
But, no, so I mean, I don't think we experienced anything too outlandishly big. You hear people talk about like all the 30-foot waves and stuff. I really don't think so. I mean, we're pretty cognizant of how big a wave really is. It definitely feels huge.
Oh, sure.
But you got to think about
horizon,
the reality of where the point. I mean, we're sitting really low in the water, so anything greater than like 4 feet feels big.
Right.
So
right.
But I think realistically, the biggest we could have seen was about 12 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it seemed like the weather that you all had overall was pretty good from what I noticed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. There's that whole scenario of you, like you say, flooding the bilge and locking yourselves in the cabins, and the boat rolls over and over. And
we never actually had to stop rowing.
Yeah.
The only times we would actually truly stop was to get out of the boat and swim and to clean the bottom. Otherwise we never had to really stop.
You did. I was noticing that you didn't have like a bottom paint because you probably went for the fast and slick. So how often did you clean the bottom?
We cleaned the bottom. It varied, but depending on the conditions. But I think we ended up cleaning it about 3 or 4 times during the crossing. So maybe about every 7 to 10 days.
Okay. I need to be mindful of that for my race to Alaska. I'm going.
Yeah, we did not. It did have bottom paint on it, but we didn't redo it from the previous year. It was just too expensive, too much time. We just didn't have the opportunity and extra weight that we didn't think was necessary, and it wasn't. As it turned out, that we got it to the start line in Gomera, and we just scrubbed it off, and it was like, oh, it's brand new. It looked great after we had done that. It looked pretty ratty beforehand because everyone else, no one else, like a lot of the newer boats didn't have bottom paint.
Right.
They just did a wax layer, which looked like a lot of work, honestly. And I'm glad we didn't have to do that. But but they looked so shiny and clean in our boat here. It's like, it was all mucky on the bottom and stuff. And we're like, oh dear. But after a little bit of scrubbing, it looked great. So we were like,
that's scrappy. Great. So I'm trying to think now. So many directions to go. How about 360? What did you learn from that? How was that experience? I just was glancing at your kind of your Instagram stories about how you got pinned down right near the end on Whidbey Island.
I mean, 360 was fantastic. We had so much fun. I mean, honestly, comparable to the ocean ride, we had a great time. Okay. It was the first time the three of us, me, Isaac, and Kramer, had ever just done row ourselves, because it was kind of unique to have Isaac up from Santa Barbara, right? So we were doing it just the three of us, and we were testing out a new rowing schedule, which is the one we'd end up using going across the ocean as well, where for me, I would start at 4 a.m. and I'd do 2 hours on, 1 hour off, 2 hours on, 1 hour off, 2 hours on, 1 hour off. You do that 7 times until you meet midnight, and then I have a 4-hour break until 4 a.m. and then you start again.
Wow.
So that was our schedule. It's 14 hours on, 10 hours off. And we just had no idea, could we actually do this? Because I'd done a bunch of, Excel calculations, like, well, what's our optimal? We knew that the boat could do like roughly 2.3 knots in reasonably flat conditions with a solo person rowing at a consistent pace. You could definitely do faster, and then 3.1 with 2 people up. And then if you had 3 people rowing, it would be about 3.5 knots. So, it definitely would plateau, and the optimal was definitely 2 people. So our objective was, how do we have 2 people rowing at the absolute most amount of time? That was, as it turned out, 18 hours a day. We'd have 2 people rowing with that arrangement because it was staggered. And so yeah, that ended up working. We did it the entire way around until we reached our nemesis, Admiralty Inlet there. And it was I guess the end of the 4th day for us. And it was just, the currents were in the wrong direction. The wind and the waves were in the wrong direction. And like, so we got out into the inlet and we're like, oh, wow, we're doing like 3 knots. And I'm like, well, what's our true direction? It's like, oh, we're going 3 knots backwards.
Oh, wow.
So we had to swing back and get back behind Whitby and ended up having to anchor there for about 13, 14 hours, which was a bummer because we had gone nonstop the rest of the way. We were really disappointed we weren't there Friday night because we rolled up Saturday morning at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So, but we were happy we made it in the good time, because we were super worried because, the night before it was raining, it was windy. We were like, oh, I didn't think it would be this, this bad out. We didn't have like, we didn't have foul weather gear at the time. We did eventually buy foul weather gear for a California row that we ended up doing. But we were like, oh, geez, this might be really bad. Like, we could be in the rain for 5 days straight here. Obviously, it didn't happen that way. It was quite lovely. Actually, really good for us because it wasn't that windy.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we were just very antsy at the beginning because we just didn't know, could we even do this? And we told a few people, like, people had asked us like, oh, like, what do you think how long do you think it's gonna take you? We're like, we're hoping for 5 days. They're like, oh, really? And we're like, why?
Yeah, right. What do you know that we don't know? Yeah.
Is that good or something? Yes, that is good actually. But yeah, no, but we made it in time. We were all worried because we're like, we have to be back at work on Monday.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah.
But anyway, we did, and it was such a good time. We had a great time. We did do the 14 hours per day each all the way through.
And you liked it?
Oh yeah, we had a great time. Honestly, would do 360 again. It was such fun.
Oh, good. No, but I mean the schedule you liked as well.
And the schedule worked. It was honestly, it was fantastic because you still got if you did 4 people rowing, you'd typically do 2 hours on, 2 hours off.
Right.
And what we found with the 14-hour rotation with the 2 hours on, 1 hour off, it gave your hands less time to kind of recover, so to speak. So you didn't cramp up as much. So restarting for the next 2-hour shift wasn't as painful on your hands, which I thought was interesting and really true for the actual row itself. But it also meant that for the 4-hour break that you had in the middle of the night, you were able to get at least one good REM cycle in, which you couldn't if you just had 2 hours off. And that made a huge difference just in terms of general recovery, but also it gave a good cycle to the entire thing. So it didn't feel consistent, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 hours on, 2 hours. It gave you like, okay, we're on to the next day, which was
so in
refreshing.
that 1 hour off that you're talking about, your rowing partner is rowing alone for that 1 hour?
No, during the 1 hour off, you've got
you switch in the other. Okay, there's always 2 people.
You're offset. The only time when you're not 2 people is during that 4-hour breaks, which are staggered. Okay. So they're staggered across 8 hours.
Gotcha.
And yeah, in the middle of the night. So for me, I had a solo shift at the end and the beginning of my shifts. So 1 hour block each. And Isaac and Kramer each had a 2-hour block in the middle of the night where they were solo.
Okay.
Which is a little hairy, but we got pretty good at navigating at night by ourselves. We'd have the iPad on the side, kind of like, where are we? What am I doing?
Yeah. Well, with the 360, that's knowing where you are is a bigger deal than when you're out in the ocean.
Exactly. Yes. In the ocean, you just have to make sure you're pointing in one direction and generally going that way. Right. But on 360, it's like, is there a ship near me? I remember I had a night shift where there was a tug with a barge in tow, and I had I knew the tug was there because I could see it on the marine traffic, and I saw his lights, but I couldn't figure out what direction he's going and where his load was. I just couldn't. He eventually ended up turning a spotlight on his load, and I'm like, okay, I'm going this way because I was going the other way. I couldn't for some reason he went on my inside, and I'm like, I don't know why you did that, but whatever. And I kept going. So
Yeah.
anyways, but it was just like one of those kind of hairy moments, like, you see
Oh, yeah.
barges on Lake Union, you're just like, oof,
Yeah.
if you get caught near that, you are gone.
Oh,
So,
yeah. No, they're scary for sure.
yeah. But anyway.
Wow. Let's rattle through gear just a little bit, like safety gear.
Oh yeah.
There's I'm obviously a bunch of stuff that was required. But like anything of note that I don't know, just that you were glad. I mean, I EPIRB and all those sorts of things, but anything that, I mean, were you harnessed in when you were on deck?
All times.
All the time. Okay, harnessed all the time.
Yeah, we had 3-point harnesses on. We used a modified climbing harness. So what we did is we just took a typical like bouldering harness, cut off the legs, cut off the straps, and so it was just like a band around your waist.
Oh.
And that's what we used. And we just clipped into the climbing loop with the 3-point harness. The harness then went to the jack line on the boat, on the deck of the boat, and one of our sidelines. So we were tethered in 3 places. And that was
that's what you mean by 3-point. Okay.
So. Yeah. So yes.
So there's like a line that's like at your like eye height or so.
There were 2. Yeah, there's one like eye height side. And one at like, I guess chest height.
Okay.
And then one on the deck. And so we'd clip into 2 of the 3 of them at all times.
Okay. Nice. That's good. It's good to keep your crew on the boat.
Yes. We had throw lines too in case someone did fall over. When we did practice those on Lake Union a fair bit. We practiced dumping water on each other and just like, get up, go do things. Like, what happens if there's a wave? Like, we tried different things and tried to experience. We never actually managed to capsize the boat ourselves, nor were we ever in a situation where we did capsize, thankfully.
Right.
It felt pretty close during the actual row, but again, that's why we put the ballast, or we flooded the ballast. But the other boats did capsize in that race.
Oh.
We did not, and I attribute that largely to our experience. Also, we did a row off California. We went from Bodega Bay we went from Crescent City to Bodega Bay. We were going to go to San Francisco, but we ran out of time. We had to go back to work. So
that's still a long ways. How far is that?
I think it was like 240 miles. It took us about 4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that one. We had fog. That was fog for a lot of it. And I mean, there was one, I know Kramer mentioned an experience where he could hear the engine of another boat, but could not see it.
Yeah.
In the pitch black, rowing solo off the California coast, in the wind and the waves and the cold. I mean, this was September 2021. Wow. Yeah. The night before had been about 40 knot winds, so we were very aware of. We decided we actually paused for a day before we started because we were like, we reached out to a woman named Leah Ditton, who's done lots of rows offshore solo. She's absolutely amazing. She's a professional sailor, all sorts of crazy stuff. Definitely worth checking her out. But she advises, she's like, you know what? You're never going to experience that kind of conditions on the Atlantic. I wouldn't take the risk. And so we waited a night and went the next day. We still got some pretty decent, probably like 8-foot waves at the most. At the worst point, maybe up to like 25, 30 gusts, but I mean, not 40 sustained, like not even close. So that was a good decision. I mean, would it have been a crazy experience? Yes. But did I want to lose the boat over it? No.
Yeah. So, well, plus doing that row, you're going to have generally, I don't know what you had, but one would predict wind and seas on the beam.
Yes, we did. And so it was a good test of the seasickness patches we took. That was the only row, I believe, which I vomited on. Because we were using scopolamine patches, and unfortunately, we took them right before we started. You have to wait and take them 2 hours before you start. If you don't, it's not going to be effective. But once it kicked in, it was quite effective. We actually used those during the actual race on the Atlantic.
Yeah.
None of us got sick.
Did you just start out with them, or did you use them routinely?
We used them for about a week at the beginning. Change them out roughly every 2 days or something. But for me, I had to stop because I was starting to lose vision. I couldn't read.
Right.
And there was hallucinations and stuff too, and it was that. But once I couldn't read, I was like, okay, this is dumb. Let's get rid of this.
Yeah.
By then, I was adjusted. So, I think Kramer kept it on a little bit longer because he was more prone to seasickness, and then Isaac got rid of them quite early. I don't even know if he used them, but
Yeah.
anyway, they were very effective.
I've only tried them once or twice, but I knew someone who had a vision issue. They also were double patching because they were really concerned. So
don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, Kramer ended up doing that on the California row accidentally. He had
Yeah.
one that slid down his neck and he didn't realize.
Oh.
And so he put a second one on.
Oh, and he was getting a double dose.
Oh, he was not having a good time by the end of that. Just seeing lots of different things and vision, etc. But the row was over by that point. But
so, and was he the one that found it, or one of you look and say, "Hey, you got 2 patches"?
I don't remember, but at some point we noticed. He's like, dude, you have a second patch on here.
So that explained it.
Yes. Not the most welcome thing. No, double is crazy. I was talking to someone recently. I can't remember who, but who recommended you cut it in half and do one on each side so it balances better, which I thought was really clever. I hadn't thought about that. So another way to approach it.
Jonathan, I have more to talk to you about, but I just want to honor your time. We're about 5 to 11. Are you?
I'm fine to continue.
Okay, great.
I'm more than happy to talk about this.
Great. Okay, good. Awesome. All right, thank you. Yeah. Let's see. That's awesome. I'm really glad you brought up the California row. Just more gear stuff.
Yeah.
I have a question specifically because I'm hunting stoves. What'd you do and food? And I've seen the pictures of your many packages of food and so forth. And you had mentioned a nutritionist you had worked with. So I was wondering if you maybe just start with the stove. That's probably pretty quick, and then move on into what did you eat?
We had a stove.
Yeah.
We never used it. We used it once on Washington 360 to make some warm food because we were stopped at anchor for 13 hours and decided why not? We're not rolling anywhere. And we used it once on the Atlantic crossing to make coffee because it was day 35 and we felt like it. I think, or no, it was day 38 and we knew we were at the finish. We're like, well, let's try it out. We never used it because for me especially, I just I don't tolerate boiling water very well. And so for me, I didn't care if my food was hot. I also didn't want to experience a wave crashing over the boat and having boiling water splash out onto somebody, because that would just be a difficult thing to treat in the middle of the ocean. And, there were gimbals and stuff that people had used before, and there was a mount for a gimbal that you could use. And this is just a, what's it called? Just a jet boil. So really, really simple, just with the mini canisters that you can't refill them. It's not white gas. It's I don't remember what it is, but
isobutane propane, something like that. It's a mixture.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just the little canisters. And I mean, it was all fine and dandy. They get rusty a little bit, so just be cognizant of where you're storing them. But we didn't bother for the most part just because of the risk and the time. Because I mean, the biggest factor for us was time. You really only have those 6 1-hour breaks where you can eat, shower, do anything, right? Sleep some extra. I mean, you would typically use two out of those 6 to sleep. And so you really only have like 4 hours to eat 5,000 calories at least a day. The last thing you really want to do is be waiting for water to boil. So, but as far as nutrition and food goes, we packed a lot. We planned for, I think I was meant to have like 5,500 a day. Kramer, I think, was like 6,700, and Isaac was about 7,000. In reality, I think I was consuming about 4,500 a day, and the others were somewhere in the 5,000s. If I had to guess, maybe up to 6,000 for Isaac on a good day. But it's just difficult to consume that much food that quickly. And I am a notoriously slow eater, so for me, that was not really a viable option.
What did you eat?
A lot of different things. So we also were, budget constrained. So we did one freeze-dried meal a day. I think we used Mountain House. It was great. We used it in Washington 360 for the first time, and that was a good test, and they were fantastic. But those are not cheap. So we ended up making mostly our own food, which was, Quaker oats in a bag. Like basically and when I say in a bag, I mean in like a Ziploc quart bag.
Right.
Just seal it up, add water, let it sit for 20 minutes, and that's your meal. Enjoy. But the other thing we did was we crushed up ramen packages. So we would take just a regular ramen package, crush it up because you didn't want to have noodles all over it. You just wanted small bits.
Right.
It also absorbed water faster, and then add some flavoring in there, and that's your meal. I had a lot of ramen mac and cheese, which was just cheese powder plus ramen. I ate one of those a day at least. And the other thing was, I think we did couscous, which wasn't super effective in the end.
Just so it
And
didn't
we also used
hydrate.
different flavors. It didn't hydrate enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was, hindsight's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But we were rushing a little bit to the end to get it all together, but and find something that could actually work in that really specific use case. But
Yeah.
Either way, we just did different flavors inside each. So there was like, we ended up using Lipton Soup crystals as like kind of a base. And so we'd have, like a chicken stock kind of one, or Alfredo kind of one. So just different mixes going, but the same base is the same for those.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we had a lot of powders for protein and for electrolytes. We used I guess we had like Kachava as one. We had just basic, protein powder. We also used Tailwind as our electrolyte powder. So not as much flavor, just more electrolytes legitimately. And then we also did a lot of protein bars and not enough candy.
Not enough candy. What protein bars were you doing?
We had a good variety. We had what do we had? Gosh, I have to remember. We had a bunch of chewy bars. Not that that's necessarily like that good for protein, but we had chewy bars. We had I don't know if we actually brought Cliff bars along. I think we decided those were too dry. We had these ones called Pro bars, and they were excellent because they were like, I want to say 400 calories a bar. I mean, those things were meaty.
Nice.
So I saved that for my solo shift, my last solo shift of the day. I always had a Pro bar, just because I was like, this is the final boost for the end of the day. Got to keep me awake.
Yeah.
And there was a few others as well. I think I posted somewhere on our Instagram with a picture of all the food laid out. If anyone's curious.
Oh, I remember seeing the picture laid out. Yeah.
Yeah. I tried to give an overview of what the whole day was like.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges we found was just the prep time was so important because, like, for me to make a protein shake, for example, right?
Yeah.
We actually portioned out, and there's some great pictures of just like my entire living room just covered in food and just packages of, because the way we did it was every 12 hours, you each had an individual bag, and that was your AM bag or your PM bag. So in that 12-hour period, like AM on day 7, it would be labeled 7 AM, or it was like JAM, right? So Jonathan for AM bag, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's how we organized it in the boat as well, so we could take it out in the right order and consume it that way. But we planned for 60 days worth of food. But that said, the last 10 days of food were like pretty, I wouldn't want to be trying to survive on that, but it definitely was possible. So, but we figured we wouldn't be past 50. We were thinking our best case scenario was like, in the really, and this is like world record pace, like 35 days as a trio. 40 days would have been appropriate. 45 would have been slow. We hit 40, so planned pretty much to the T. But in any event, it was basically you had that 12 hours to consume that bag. If you hadn't consumed that entire bag, you knew you were behind. Was the theory that worked really well for 360, but we found for the ocean crossing that we couldn't consume the powders fast enough, because for me it was okay, I've got this powder in a baggie, I have to find my shaker bottle, fill it with fresh water, which you had to go on deck for typically, unless you had brought someone with you into the cabin. But you spent your off break either on deck or in the cabin. It was kind of up to you, but we also tried to put people in the bow more frequently because you had a speed advantage on surfing the waves. We actually found that in the best case scenario, if you had someone in the bow, you might be able to tack on an extra half knot on average, which is actually really significant.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
because I mean, the most important, ballast on the boat is actually our bodies. Because I mean, it's,
right, because you can move it.
This is the easiest 140 pounds to move around the boat, believe me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not that big, but So anyway, so so you have to add water to your jug, add the protein powder, shake it up, drink it, which is an exercise in itself for me. And then once you're done with it, okay, then you have to rinse out the plastic bag so you can put it in the trash. Then you've got to rinse out your bottle it with salt water once, salt water twice, like shake and rinse,
Yeah.
and then rinse it with fresh water and then dump and then put it away. So I mean that's a
Sure.
probably up to a 10-minute exercise. You've now only got 50 minutes left or something, and that's not to mention that you probably spent the first 10 minutes just like lying there going like, oh, I'm done my shift.
Right.
Um,
right.
So plus by then, who knows, you might have fallen asleep in that 10 minutes. But so to be able to consume 3+ of those a day was just, a bit of a stretch. So we
Yeah.
never really truly met the expectation on what we thought we had to consume.
Yeah.
It was more like, what can you consume? And to that end, what mattered a lot was the variety. And Isaac did a really good job planning for variety and giving us lots of different things to consume and picking out stuff that was good for each of us. Like I knew that I liked the cheesy mac and cheese stuff, whereas Isaac and Kramer did not as much. They preferred the Alfredo or whatever. Isaac was a big fan of the oats. With different flavors, I just preferred, apple cinnamon. So, just all these little things that took into account, because it's one thing to consume, exactly the right calories. It's another thing to enjoy it. And, that was more important in the end, was just, what do I actually care to eat? Like Isaac didn't care as much about like the Oreos. He would leave me Oreos as a gift after my shift from his bag. So, just little things that made a big difference just to get in more calories. Because
So
I could eat Oreos all day.
So I'm curious so you didn't have as many calories as you expected. Did you lose weight? Did you feel like you got behind in the 40 days? Or was what you ate actually adequate for keeping you going?
It's a mixture of all those things.
Okay.
It was largely adequate. I did though, by about like day 30, I was running, I was like, okay, I can feel my body eating my arms, eating my legs. Like you can just feel it, just slowly deteriorating. And that was expected.
Right.
We did bulk up a tiny bit beforehand, not as much as I wanted, of course, but a little bit.
Yeah.
It was an interesting concept though. It was like, do we bulk up or do we just let it happen? Mostly just let it happen. It was fine.
Right.
But didn't make too much of a difference for us. But I think I lost 12 pounds. Isaac lost only 9, and Kramer, I think, lost 20.
Wow.
But keeping in mind the differences between us two, like I think Isaac and Kramer are both about 6 to 6'1". I'm 5'6". So there's a bit of differences here in terms of body mass, etc. But like Isaac also can just eat a lot, whereas I'm quite slow. So but lost some weight, but I also enjoyed the meals more as time went on. At first, I was like, oh man, like what is this? Geez, I gotta eat that. Yes. But by day 40, I was like, give me another mac and cheese. This is great.
Right. Did your palates change? I mean, it sounds like you customized the food for each of you, and what you liked, but did your palates change? Like, by day 30 or 40, you're like, oh, I can't eat any more of these, or I want more of that?
Yeah. I mean, we did do a little bit of trading occasionally. Or like I, for example, would be like, I'm not going to be able to eat this one. Does anyone want it? Isaac would be like, yeah, I'll give it to me. I'll eat it. So it kind of varied. Yeah. I mean, we did have the nice thing where we did have that one freeze-dried meal a day, which actually Isaac only brought in at like the last minute. He was like, you know what? I just decided I'm going to buy all these and just bring them along. And we're like, great. But we had a great variety of that. And we could kind of choose, okay, who wants this one, or this one today? So
those you were hydrating those cold?
Cold. Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
It was great. I mean, the warmth really didn't change too much as far as like chemically. It still tasted about the same.
Yeah.
And just the prep time and the amount of effort required, I don't know how anyone does that unless especially as a team of 3, it just seems like a ton of extra effort for not really a lot of marginal benefit because you're already warm.
Yeah.
It's on average about what is this I'm a Celsius guy, so it's like 24 to 28 Celsius out there, which I guess
so
is
it's warm.
80s.
Yeah,
it's quite warm out there. So we would have paid happily for cold, But
Yeah.
But
But then you might have done the stove more if it was cold.
Maybe, but we didn't actually do it on the California row, which was more like 12 degrees. So I mean, right on the edge of, I guess, what, like 50, 60 or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was cold on that row, but we didn't end up using it again because just the waves and everything else wasn't appropriate.
Did you just for the beginning of the row across the Atlantic, did you bulk up with any like fresh things that would spoil, like cheese or vegetables or fruit or things like that?
Yeah, there was a team that bought 13 or 11 pizzas before they left. And it's like, send us a bunch of pizzas.
Wow.
In fairness, they won our class.
Okay.
They beat us. So, good for them.
Interesting.
They said later they regretted that, but
okay, but it wasn't the pizzas. That wasn't
the
clincher.
pizzas.
Okay.
No, it was their route. We got unlucky with the route that we chose. In any other year, our route was brilliant, and we were winning right at the beginning. But we got hit with the doldrums. We just got we got hosed. So anyway, that was all fun. But we did bring fresh fruit. So we carried a bunch of apples. I think we had some oranges, if I remember. I don't remember eating oranges myself because I don't like them as much. But I think we had apples. I think we had some bananas. Yeah, we brought a little bit of fresh fruit with us at the beginning, just because we could.
Yeah.
It didn't last particularly long. I think it lasted up until about maybe day 5. It wasn't too bad. But
okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, it makes some sense. I didn't know if you were.
We also had fruit cups. Those little like fruit cups.
fruit cups. Those will last.
Great. They lasted almost the entire trip.
Okay, so those made it.
Saltines. The saltines are also a treat. We consumed a lot of saltines. Yeah.
Wow.
Even after they got a little bit soggy. I mean, there was stuff in especially in the stern cabin. The stern cabin goes under the deck, so it's got this kind of under. Your legs go deep down there.
Yeah.
I had some of my gear. Honestly, everything started to mold in that cabin at some point. Like I was super happy that my rain jacket survived because it was getting mold on the cuffs because I only wore it once.
Wow.
But I didn't put it away totally dry, obviously. But it also got kind of moist down there, and I mean, thankfully, I ended up completely stripping all of it. We like Kramer made us custom cushions for the whole thing too. We stripped them all out and let them air dry and washed them once, which was really, really good. It made a huge difference.
Yeah.
We actually even turned them inside out at one point just to get the other side, so it wasn't as it wasn't nasty, but I mean, you wouldn't want to really sleep on it. But anyway, like my gear was starting to mold. My bag was molding. I'm like, oh no, the saltines are molding. The important things. No, but so, but we kind of expected that to a degree. But it was still like, oh dear, this was like day 25 plus or minus when it was starting to get a little bit. And that was when we had the roughest weather too, around day 25 through 28. So it was like the perfect storm of like, we're getting like really to the end of the limits of what we're doing here, but also it's like really rough outside and really intense.
Right. Not a
and
good
also
day to
the best part was
out.
that during that time, the moon was now gone. So we actually experienced an entire moon cycle. Luckily though, the moon was out at the very beginning for us, which was really nice because it was still bright enough out that you could see at night and see waves coming. Whereas in the roughest time, that was when the moon had finally decided it wasn't going to show up for the whole night. And so it was pitch black with those 10 to 12 foot kind of waves somewhere out there lurking. You'd occasionally get the surprising whoosh, beside you and just scare the daylights out of you. Not that there was any daylight, but
Wow. So you said like the highest would be like 12, but the average was lower. And so you just get surprised by big ones every now and then.
Every now and then. Yeah. It definitely, it felt like maybe I think Isaac had said like, he thought it was like 98% of the waves were fine. Right. But it was that 2% or so that would occasionally catch you off guard, that would just smack you from the side or flood the deck or, something of that matter. I remember like, as far as speeds go, so remember the average speed for like the 2-person rowing on flat water was 3.1.
Right.
The fastest I got the boat going solo was 10 knots. And that was at least 10 because I couldn't actually see the decimal point because the wave was over top of us.
Wow.
I called like the wedding wave because the wedding cake wave, because it was one big wave that kind of swamped us, and then there was a second wave that came on top of it, and
Oh,
so we just
geez.
kind of whoosh torpedoed the boat out of the wave. That was
Wow.
really fun. But then that was the record for about an hour and a half, and then Kramer and I were on deck, and we got hit with this huge wave, and it hit us. The boat was going sideways at 8 knots.
Oh,
And then it managed to kind of right itself a little bit, and then it ended up pushing us, I think 13.6 knots was what
whoa.
it exited at. We were just
Wow.
flying, and we were like, whoa, just holding on for dear life. That was great. But I mean, again, we didn't capsize. I think a lot of that was just due to our experience with going through some difficult
Yeah.
conditions in the Sound or in California, off Westport, wherever we did. So
So, well, so the auto helm held up.
for the most part.
Okay.
we had one night where we were going too slow for the auto helm to operate, because in most cases this auto helm is designed for a small sailboat.
Yeah.
Where you might be doing 7 to 10 knots.
Yeah.
Right. But we're doing like 3. So if on a bad day we're doing like 1.5. Right. If the current is against us, the wind's against us, and it's just you can just hear it. It's really annoying to sleep with. We actually this is why I talked to Leah about this right before we started. If you sleep in the stern cabin, which I did, Isaac and Kramer rotated in the bow cabin, you would dream with the sounds of the auto tiller. So it would be going like, because it's just an actuator, right? And it would just be making this really loud sound, but it would enter your dreams, in some way or another, because it's just the sound you have to get used to. Right. So sometimes it was violin, sometimes it was something else. It just existed in your dreams.
Right.
But anyway, but yeah, it would go really hard trying to figure out where we're going, because we're going so slow.
Right.
But, we had this one night where the wind was against us. It was, just headwind all the way, and we had to turn off the auto tiller, lock it in a straight line, and basically your entire solo shift was, your only objective is to keep the boat facing straight into the wind. You had to look at the weather vane and be like, okay, where am I? I need to point the boat. That was your only objective. Not even try to row forward, just keep us pointed that way. Otherwise, we're gonna get tossed and sent off in the bad direction. So
right. Well, and with the big seas, were you trying to keep the stern into the wind or into the waves?
It was a combination. It was yes, but also no, because we wanted to maintain our VMG, right? So we were I'd say for the most part, a lot of the waves came from the north. So we were kind of, maybe the optimal direction for wind for us was about 30 to 40 degrees off the bow, or off the stern.
Off the stern,
So, we aimed for that mainly because that was the most useful thing. And typically the waves followed, but a lot of times there were occasionally, kind of these cross waves. And we had some days where the waves came from practically every direction. It didn't almost matter. And it was so different. Like, you were just going like this the whole time. Like, I can't even put in a proper stroke, and that's fine. That's what ocean rowing is. But, the waves were, for the most part, somewhat on our beam. We tried to get behind them, but if you did, you'd just go straight south.
Right. Okay. That's it just sounds challenging. I mean, with those big waves, just like, but you're
centerboard did a great job.
Okay.
That definitely helped keep the boat true for the most part.
Yeah.
But it was also, my biggest fear was that we'd have a wave that would catch us, take us sideways, and then the auto tiller would lock, because if the auto tiller goes off by more than 30 degrees or 40 degrees, it locks itself and says, I don't know what to do, help me.
In the position it's in, or
in
straight?
The position it's in.
Oh no.
Which means it could just turn you around, and it did once or twice, but we practiced for that too. It just meant some quick thinking to get it adjusted. But that was my biggest fear, that it would get stuck and we get hit by a big wave and it would just toss us over.
Right.
I'm pretty confident that's how most people would capsize.
Yeah.
But it didn't end up happening that way for us, at least not one that actually capsized us. So
right.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, just in the spectacular sense, did you have moments where you thought you might go over?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we had this little plaque on the back of the boat number one, we also had it was awesome. Honestly, we had all of the names of everyone we did like a GoFundMe and other stuff like that, right? And we had the names of everyone who had supported us on the back of the boat, so we could look at them and see the messages they left us, and that was really motivating, especially in the middle of the night, just being there and like, reading the messages. Kind of that was intense.
Nice.
But also we had another plaque that said there was like 6 rules. I think number 1 was it was stay clipped in. That was number 1. Or no, close the cabin doors. That was number 1. I think like number 5 or 6 was like expect the boat to capsize.
Mm.
So we always kind of went in with the mentality of I'm going to go in right now, and that's fine because I'm prepared for that. You didn't want to, but I mean, just mentally,
Yeah.
you didn't really have a lot of bandwidth to get scared because otherwise you might make a mistake.
Yeah.
So anyway, you just went in with that mentality. So you kind of always were expecting to capsize, although it didn't happen. I mean, I know there was a time where I thought I was in the cabin and I thought, okay, this is it. Like this has to be it, because I felt the wave at first and I was like, oh dear. I heard the smash of the wave on the back of the boat, and then just the deluge of water coming over the cabin. And I'm inside, of course. Isaac's outside solo in the middle of the night. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like I was like, hold on, Isaac, and he told me afterwards, he's like, yeah, I'm just happy I didn't lose my water bottle. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, it was floating around on deck with me because the deck had completely submerged, and he was just like floating, or the stuff was just floating on deck around him.
Wow.
Like the bottles were like the only thing that wasn't like hard secured to the deck at that point.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
Everything else had a tether, but it was just kind of too annoying to have a bottle tethered. We had spares as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think we actually ever lost a bottle from a wave like that necessarily. We lost bottles from like dropping them overboard accidentally, but not from like a wave necessarily carrying them away because they were in like a bucket. But anyway, yeah. But just that experience of the whole deck just underwater.
Wow.
It's an interesting place.
For sure. I mean, it's interesting that that you were, you went into this expecting that to happen, and then you had it happen, and so in the cabin you have your gesture. I don't know if you have something to hold on to, or you're just holding on to the overhead.
The overhead mostly. I mean, to the sides. The stern cabin for me, I kind of liked it because my legs were underneath the deck. So if we did capsize, my legs would just be like, on the top, and my head wouldn't go into the roof, right?
Right.
At least in theory. We never got to test that, thankfully. Yeah. But whereas in the bow, it was just an open cabin. So, if it did capsize, you were on the ceiling
right.
in rapid succession.
Right.
But yeah, either way, it didn't end up having to happen. But the stern also had a lot more, pokey things, I guess. Screws out of from the ceiling and stuff like that you just probably wouldn't want to attach your head to. So all the electronics and other stuff as well. But no, we were fine. But there wasn't really any handholds or stuff like that. But if you were on deck, we did have a procedure, like you wanted to try to stow your oars as fast as possible and get low, kind of thing, like, or grab the sidelines at least.
How did you stow your oars? How would the
just
rower?
Quick?
But I mean, what is crossing them?
Yeah, just crossing them over yourself.
Okay.
Whatever you could do to get them in, basically,
right,
just
to
try to keep that
leverage. Yeah.
Because something else we were worried about was breaking oars, because we've heard that too, and that's another way you can quickly find yourself not being able to finish. We never broke an oar. The only oar we ever broke was actually on a training row where we went into the dock too fast and just snapped the oar off.
Yep.
It was fun, but nonetheless, the other way, we just, if for longer term, you could put them in the gunnels, and there was like proper storage that we had straps designed specifically to hold the oars in for that. So.
Right. Okay. Communication. What did you use?
We had a couple different things. So we obviously had the basic radio, VHF, and that was useful for communicating with other ships nearby. We did see a couple ships on the actual row. We saw, I think, 2 freighters. We saw a catamaran. We saw an unknown vessel. It didn't have AIS on. It was very mysterious. We just saw the lights and we're like, that's weird. Anyway, and we could tell it was big too. It was very big, but we had no idea what it was. I thought it might be some kind of military vessel just because it lacked the AIS, but well, who knows? Anyway, but then besides that, we had 2 satellite phones on board. These were Iridium sat phones. The race had a sponsorship deal with a company called Range Global, and they provided all our satellite equipment, and they were fantastic. I think they're based out of Texas, actually. So was nice having some Americans around in the mix. And so anyway, they provided 2 satellite phones. One was for the race duty officer, the other was for whatever you wanted. And so we could contact family and friends that way from the boat, which was great, and our support, obviously. And the other thing we had on board was a BGAN terminal. And what this allowed us to do was to send pictures and video and text and stuff like that via WhatsApp is what we ended up using. It just had really good, low latency capabilities. And so what we have to do is you'd go out on deck with this kind of box. It was about this big and weighed like maybe 5 pounds or something.
Okay.
And you'd point it at the satellite because it's a geostationary one. So at the start of the row, you'd point it to the stern. At the end, and about halfway through, you'd switch and and point it towards the bow because we changed geostationary satellites as we went around the globe, which was kind of a cool thing to think about.
Right.
So anyway, that's how we did that, and it was quite effective. It managed to send all the stuff that everyone might have seen on Instagram from us and during the row, and it worked like a charm. So we used a video compressor for all of our video stuff. So just a basic app that just compress the videos down a bit, and then we could send them via WhatsApp to our media team. And from there, Kai was able to upload them. So
nice. So I did see the minke whale footage.
Yes.
And I was curious about that and other wildlife encounters that you had.
Indeed, those were amazing. I think we came across the minke whales twice, but they came by at least in this one instance in a pack of about 30 of them. Whoa. I was asleep for about half of it, but by the time I got up, they were right there, and it was amazing. I mean, we got some really cool footage and some more that we're going to share fairly soon. We've been slowly sorting through it and getting back to real life, which we'll talk about later, I think. But
yeah,
that was unreal because we had one that was right beside us, and these guys were probably, I think the biggest minke whales were maybe about 25 feet long at the biggest. They were further away from the boat though. The ones that got a little bit closer, I think, were probably in the range of 12 to 18 feet.
Wow.
And they were sizable. But one of them actually did a roll right beside the boat, right next to us, just did a full 360 right beside us. And it was like, wow, that was the moment I was like, whoa, my gosh, like you're never, ever going to experience that again. And we actually got to go in the water with them. And for me, that was personally the highlight. Was I had a minke whale swim underneath me while I was in the water.
Wow.
And that was just spectacular, absolutely amazing.
Interesting. When I first moved to San Juan Island, minkies were called slinky minkies because you see them and then you wouldn't see them. Like they'd be there and then they'd disappear on you because they seemed rather shy. And so to hear of them actually kind of being curious and playful is really quite something. I mean, granted, probably in the middle of the ocean, there's not a whole lot for them to eat, so they're doing something else, like checking you out.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, and just being in the water too is an experience. I have a fear of water. Interestingly enough, so it's very ironic for me to have done any of this, but that's the way it is. And so, but I just looking down and just seeing nothing but blue.
Yeah.
And just knowing it's like that's several miles down, it's a little unnerving because it's also like what else is out here? Because there's obviously things that can kill you, but at the same time, it's like this is it. There's nothing else here. And I think one of the coolest things for me was just like paddling back from the boat. You're still tethered, of course, but just looking at the boat and just seeing the boat by itself.
Yeah.
It's like that's your whole little world right there. There's nothing else. Is pretty nifty. We also all have like PLBs on us too, by the way, as far as safety gear. So
okay.
You get detached. You have a slight chance, but not one you want to take. But anyways, there was also dolphins, which Isaac and Kramer swam with. That sounded crazy. I did see it as well, but I didn't get in. We also saw another whale, which I think it was a sperm whale. That one was big. That was at least 30 feet long. And we just came across it one day. We were just rowing along, and then just, Isaac was sitting at the back, at the stern on his offshoot. It was just like, whale kind of thing, right? And sure enough, we stood up, and there's just this sperm whale just sitting on the surface.
Yeah.
And it eventually just, turned and then it slowly went underneath the boat. We got some minor footage of it, which we'll eventually share. But I think it's not great. It's not as good as the main footage, but you can kind of make out. I'm pretty confident it's a sperm whale, but I can't be totally sure. I need to ask one of my biologist friends. But
yeah, no, it'd be great to see. I was one of the folks that chimed in when you were all asking about what the minke whales were.
Great, yeah.
And I was like, because you can see the armband. The pectoral fin. They have a white band on their pectoral fins, which is unique. But yeah, the sperm whales are fairly unique shaped as well. There's nothing that looks like them.
Yeah, it was bizarre because it was just sitting on the surface. We were worried at first, like, are we going to hit it?
Right.
It was that close.
Yeah.
And
well, most of the time you don't have somebody looking ahead, do you?
No, we don't. Really don't. So that's the other thing too. Is like we got a lot of really calm conditions.
Yeah.
That a lot of other teams I don't think did because we were so far north. We got hit with the doldrums, and while it lost us the race, I think it was really a great thing because it allowed us to see more wildlife. Because if it's wavy, you can't really see beneath the waves.
Right.
But when it's dead flat, like we experienced, I mean, you can see anything.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of different things. Like I'm pretty sure we saw tuna. We saw these a bunch of other random fish. There was lots of flying fish too, but those were annoying. We saw a turtle, which was crazy.
Yeah.
And the other thing we saw that was scary was the swordfish, the marlins. Those were scary because I mean, if there's anything that was going to kill us, it was going to be one of those things. And because they actually in previous years they stabbed the bottom of the boats. We don't know why. The leading theory from the race organizers is that the cruise ships used to feed them. And so they'd instinctively follow these boats. And occasionally, I guess for whatever reason, maybe they're chasing fish underneath the boat, but they would, end up stabbing the boat and putting a hole in you. And for me, being in the stern cabin, that was scary because I'm directly on the hull. So, I was preparing for a stab wound in the middle of the night. But never happened, obviously. But they would actually follow us for about like 30 minutes at a time, just trailing behind the boat. You just see this like translucent blue fin pop up and you're like, oh,
wow.
And just this dark shadow following the boat.
Sure.
And these things were not small either. Like I think the biggest one we saw, and again, this is approximate and we're conservative with our numbers. So, we're not exaggerating anything, but I think these ones were at least between 6 and 7 feet.
Wow.
Potentially much larger, but at the very least. And so they were very sizable things and extremely powerful. Occasionally we just see one just lightning fast, just whoosh, over to the other side of the boat. And it was like, holy smokes. Like you don't want to be in the water. So
did you stick the GoPro in and get some footage of them?
We got some great footage of those.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Good.
So that's some exciting stuff. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Yeah. All right. So let's we're already at an hour and a half. I want to so I saw some pictures there of you all. You're getting close to Antigua. You're getting close. How was that? And like talk us through that experience of knowing you're close and probably maybe breaking your routine so you can get there. But
a little bit, yeah.
We
were so nervous that we were going to get there in the middle of the night because we didn't want to be there at night. We just we wanted people to see us. Our parents were going to be there and stuff like that, and that was a big deal. So we wanted to make sure that it was daylight, and so we were trying to get like 72 miles every day because we got to about day 5 and we were like, we have 360 miles to go. How appropriate, given the history. But so we were like, if we can do 72 every day, we'll make it at 5:00 p.m. on the 5th day. Right? And that's right around sunset. So it was perfect timing. And we were so nervous because on the last day, we're like, we've got like 80 miles or something to go to make it there kind of thing. It's like, will we not?
Right.
We ended up doing like a really good day actually. And we got there at like 2:00. It didn't even matter. But like we had like a hard conversation the night before, like what happens if, right?
Yeah.
Do we wait? It's a long time just to sit there and wait.
Yeah.
Because once you're within like 100 miles, you're not meant to stop because they want you drifting off into some weird direction, right?
Right.
And we made the decision just to power on. It was the right one. But but I mean, it was kind of surreal. It was like, at the same time, it was like, thank goodness, because we, I think physically and mentally we were pretty done by about day 30. We were just like, we've experienced everything we could possibly experience on this row, for better or worse. I mean, it was mostly for the better, honestly. Like we had a great time. And team dynamics wise, we really had no conflicts, which was almost unheard of. I don't know. I mean, we heard of other boats who had said like we had to set up rules about like a no blame culture on board. I'm like, you
Wow.
must have gotten pretty far down to have to do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like we'd occasionally like one of us would like snap at someone else like, oh, why'd you do that kind of thing, and it'd be like a few minutes later like, sorry man, I didn't and we're like, yeah, it's fine, we understand, it's just a hard situation and it's fine. So but I mean, we just gone through so much difficulty as a team, just growing pains and like rotation of other teammates and stuff like that, that anything less than having a good time on board was going to be just such a tragedy. So
Yeah.
we were all very conscious of that, and I think worked really hard to make sure that nothing did go wrong, and it was true.
Nice.
So by the time we got to the end, though, I thought, we also got some really good advice from Jordan Hansen from Niklo, saying like, just make sure you enjoy it, right? Just have a good time.
Yeah.
We realized, and this is something that I personally had to go through, was like, we're not going to win, right? And I had to like get that out of my head and just relax, enjoy. We were still going to row pretty hard, but still enjoy, right? Enjoy the experience. And I think we really did that and made sure we consciously had the time, had the space to really appreciate what we were doing and experience the whole thing, and respect the ocean and the privilege that we had to be there. So, I think by the end we were just very much, fully absorbed and fully respecting of what we'd done and where we were. So
Yeah.
it was quite a humbling, kind of almost surreal end to the whole thing. Just like, wow, this whole thing is almost over.
Yeah.
All a little sad, a little happy, but it was just really kind of emotional. And then seeing land was crazy. Like, wow, it's there. That's it.
It's really hard to see it on the computer. I watched that bit and it's like, it's there, and you're like
It's
showing
there.
it and we're like, really? Okay, I would believe you,
100%.
but the pixels weren't picking it up.
Yeah, it was quite faint. I mean, I had woken up because I was just so tired. I took like an extended sleep. I think I did that twice during the whole row. I did like a 6-hour sleep. And so I like got up. That video is me coming out of the cabin and like, guys, I see land, and then getting a reaction. So because they obviously hadn't turned around in a couple hours. So
Right.
Yeah.
How just an aside to this, like how much did you converse while you're rowing, and how much did you just like row in silence?
An interesting mix. Like we were a weird team in a way. We like in 360, for example, we would just row silently for many, like we didn't even listen to music. We did have some music on board for the actual Atlantic crossing, but like a lot of times we just rowed in silence. But we also played a lot of games. We can name all the countries with A, name all the countries with B, C.
Right.
Q is a weird freaking letter. Anyway, just random stuff like that, random trivia. Like, Isaac just knows some crazy stuff. And just also just like telling each other's life stories, like tell me about you in high school in full depth kind of thing, and tell me about all the different people in your family, and we now know each other very, very, very well. But there was still lots to talk about. So, and it was just a matter of like finding things to discuss, but also just being comfortable just rowing in silence, especially at night, was peaceful just to be out there and just listening to the waves and watching the stars kind of thing.
Right.
So it was a mix, and also we'd occasionally play the music and just row.
Yeah.
Those are some of the more productive sessions. But
okay. All right. So arriving at Antigua.
Pretty weird. We didn't actually know where the English Harbor was.
Okay.
Our charts were really low fidelity. We couldn't actually I realized I was like, I can't zoom in any further, and it's not showing me where it actually is. I just know there's a pin right here on the map, which
Okay.
I approximately know what this looks like, but I really don't.
Right.
We had charts, but I wasn't about to go dig them up with a few hours to go. Thankfully, the Coast Guard came out and like, oh yeah, it's over here. It's like you go around the corner, it's like, oh, okay. But like there's some pretty big waves and wind out here. I don't want to.
Yeah, you don't want to miss it. Yeah.
The first people we saw was actually a tourist boat. Like, one of those big boats with like 5, 400 horse engines, just like roars up to us, and we're like, oh, is this like families or something? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't seem like something they would do. Honestly, it was no, just these tourists on this boat. They're all just like, look at these guys. And we're just like, hey,
Right.
you're the first people we've seen in 40 days. How cool. Great. um, welcome back to reality, boys. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, there was 2 of those that whipped around. Then we did get the Coast Guard boat. We got the media boat from Atlantic Campaigns. Then we came in. We could see our families up on the shoreline, and that was pretty cool.
Nice.
We came in, we did the flares, the whole bit. It was a lot of energy after 40 days of nothingness.
Yeah.
So it was pretty intense. And then it was also really windy. So it was like, I was like, guys, get back on the oars, like quick, we're gonna go into shore. Like, quick, bit of a scramble at the end. And then we came in really hot to the dock too, because it was like we just couldn't stop. I was like, oh man. And then we got to the dock, and that was pretty surreal seeing everyone there. It was really intense. But no, it was just crazy. And then actually stepping on land felt pretty weird, and
Sure.
just being off the boat and just looking back at it and like, wow, like unclipping and taking the harness off fully and being outside without the harness on, just just some very, you imagine it so much though, right? It's kind of one of those pretty climatic, but also like I totally know what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
So one of those interesting things, I think the best moments from the row were anything but the finished to a degree. It was spectacular and it was really fun, but it was just a relief too, just knowing like we did it. There's nothing else that can go wrong.
Right.
We're here.
Right.
Consumed for the last 2+ years just trying to get this to work, and we made it. So yeah, a huge relief.
How I was going to ask you how well you slept, but how about this? How long was it before you woke up thinking you were on the boat?
I still think about it, but no, I mean it wasn't too bad actually. Again, it was something that you kind of expected. So, but I mean, I think I stirred a lot more in my sleep, and I think I still kind of do a little bit now.
Yeah.
But I would wake up, kind of like, whew, like where am I? Like, when's my shift, kind of thing.
Right.
It wasn't as bad for me as I think Isaac had it worse a little bit. But that was true even during the row. Just waking up at random times and waking up kind of delusional, like, is it my shift? Is it my shift? And Kramer being like, nope, you're safe. You're fine. Just go back to sleep. Right. Happened for me like once or twice too. And I think Kramer for a couple times as well, but just being a little delusional.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd also like wake up in the middle of the night and you think you were outside because you'd look up and you'd see stars, but it wasn't stars. It was just dark. It was just the inside of the cabin. But you'd imagine these things, and yeah, I mean, on land, it didn't take long really to adjust. I slept a lot. I ate a lot.
Yeah.
Ate a lot. But it didn't take more than a week to be somewhat back to a somewhat normal routine. My hands my hands still seize a little bit. Like they were, like I couldn't close them. That was like the furthest I could go.
Wow.
Like a couple days afterwards, and that was expected too. But after some exercise, etc., I can now obviously close my hands. But before, it took about a week to be able to close my hands properly.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
That was about it.
Yeah.
There was some severe sore butts from the seats and the wetness and everything else. That was probably the worst part was the seats.
I meant to ask you that. What kind of padding did you have?
We had just like foam pads. We went through a lot of different foam pads. There's some pictures on the Instagram too, just like of holes in the foam and where our sit bones are and stuff. And we got pretty good at hollowing those out to make it appropriate for each of our our sitting. And we'd actually just rotate seat pads. So like the seats themselves are just they're on wheels, right? They just roll back and forth, and they're just a hard fiberglass kind of shell, and then you'd put the foam on top of it. Right. And we did that. We tested out on 360, and they were great. We just had this black foam, high density kind of foam. It didn't compress too much, but it did compress, and it was great for the whole thing. And we actually brought that same stuff on the row. And we just ended up going through a lot of it because it would compress, and it would eventually get to a point where it's as good as sitting on a rock, right? And so we were running out of foam. It was funny actually because there was an Australian team at the start line, and they had this like foam, almost like yoga mat thing that was like about ye thick and like 6 feet long, 3 feet wide kind of thing. And they were about to go throw it out because they were just using it to like lie under their boat and do some maintenance and stuff. And I'm like, are you guys going to throw that out? And they're like, yeah, what do you want? I'm like, can I have it? And they're like, sure. That foam pad was the best thing I brought on board because we used every scrap of it to make those seats. I mean, holy smokes. If we didn't have that, it would have been much worse. But I mean, either way, it was, that was definitely one of the most difficult physical challenges of on board, was just having the seats working for us. So,
yeah. I did the 7048 couple in 2019, but I rode from Port Townsend to Tacoma kind of as like a vacation in a way. But and by the time I was in Tacoma, my butt was so sore, and I was like, oh great, now I got to do the race. and I had to learn to sit differently. Yeah, but so yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about that. Okay, so lots of foam, and realize that you're going to just squeeze all the air right out of it.
Oh yeah. It's just going to get more and more compressed over time. It just, it's the nature of it.
So you, so you finished, and what happened to the boat? Where'd the boat go?
The boat was sent back to the UK and then sold through the manufacturer to a team in Malta.
Oh,
I do not know what their plan is with the boat.
Okay,
but,
so you didn't even
have it.
Yeah, didn't even go to Washington. It just went right from Antigua.
Just went straight from there. It was gone, which was it was kind of bittersweet, but we didn't really get much of a chance to have our families try the boat, for example, which was a shame because my parents hadn't actually seen it since.
Oh wow.
That was the first time they actually physically seen it because of COVID. So anyway, but so it's now off to a different home.
Hold on a second here. I got a dog asking me something. Hold on.
All good.
I think I'll just hold on to him until we're done here. This is Nigel, by the way.
Wonderful.
And so, and then you I assume you probably all go your ways. I mean, you see Kramer more because he's in Seattle with you, but Isaac went back to work. What's his PhD in? What is he studying?
He's doing computer science.
Computer science.
Some kind of theoretical computer science that makes no sense to me.
Okay. And so how has it been? This is what you finished it was in January, right?
Finished in January, got back to Seattle in February. Back to work mid-February sometime. It's been very difficult actually. I mean, it's just, you go from everything happening to, I'm literally back in my little office here, just working remotely, everything else. It's been very mentally challenging. Also just got to catch up on all sorts of different things and, whatever else life hits back and work, etc. Right. So, it's been quite difficult actually. So I think we've all kind of experienced that. It's just almost like, wow, spent 2 years nonstop on this project and it's just kind of over. I mean, there's still a lot of things we need to follow up on and finish, and we'll be doing that this month. But it was just kind of good for us also just take a bit of a hiatus from the entire thing and just be like, okay, what's next for us? Because it's been very difficult for us to think beyond the row, right? So it's like, wow, okay, now what am I doing, right? We're all working and everything else, but just kind of reassessing life and what we're doing and what we've experienced and what we can apply, and all sorts of thoughts, right? It's just a lot to process all at once, and yet at the same time, in a kind of ironic way, very little to process because you're back to normal. It's like the world has been lifted off your shoulders, but at the same time, now what, right?
Right.
So it's an interesting thing. I think a lot of people handle it differently, but I think just making sure that we each got the time needed to just decompress has been super important. I think we're each, I think everyone's in different places in terms of how they're handling it, because it's, our work is not without its stress. And there's been a lot of stress on it because, every vacation we've taken in the last 2 years has been, at least for me, for sure, tied to doing something for the row.
Right.
I've never, didn't take any time off where it was like, oh, I'm just going to take the week off and just go on a vacation. No, it was like, we're going to go for a row.
Yeah.
Or we're going to work on this boat, or, we're going to go do this race, or whatever it might be. So it's just, it's just a lot to, kind of readjust, I suppose. But
Right. I want to ask you what's next, but maybe before that, tell us about the cause you were trying to raise money for. A cause.
Yeah. We raised money for Assistance League of Seattle.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they raise money for underprivileged school children and provide them with new clothing so that they can go to school and feel, comfortable and welcomed, and not have to be, worried about what they're wearing to class. It takes a lot of stress off the families as well. And it gives them a huge boost of confidence in the classroom, which helps them to succeed. So that's what we were raising money for. And we still are. People can still donate on our website. And it's just a really fantastic cause and super important, especially during the pandemic. Because low-income families are still recovering from the pandemic, even today. It was a big issue before, and it became multiple fold during. So it was we made an assessment after we decided we were postponing due to COVID on what can we do that's local, that's going to help the community, because that's where it's hurting most. We were lucky enough that we were able to continue even thinking about doing the row. So it was,
right.
Absolutely, we had to think, how can we make this, impactful and useful? We have an excellent platform. What can we do to make it, meaningful?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what's your relationship with the organization? Like, people and
not at all. Actually, I discovered them because I was looking, like, what can we do locally that I think is underrepresented, that's at a scale that we could have some meaning for, right? And that are doing really great things. And it's all volunteer ran as well, which I thought was just amazing.
Sure.
And they run a thrift shop in Wallingford, just an amazing group of people. And so I just connected with them and said, hey, I'm looking to do this crazy adventure. I want to have a cause attached to it. And are you guys interested in working with us a little bit? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So,
That's
that
great.
was an easy connection. Yeah.
Nice. That's wonderful. It's great that you did that, and it makes sense to do such a thing. So here you are. So what's next?
Here we are.
and I say that I guess because I expect there to be something next.
Right.
And I maybe there
expectations.
Maybe there isn't, when I'm thinking about it kind of in the adventure realm, but all sorts of things could be next. So anyway, take that question how you will.
I think one of the big things we have to get to is really sharing the story with people, because we haven't really done that much. We obviously haven't posted anything on our Instagram since we finished. So yeah, that's one big thing that's kind of I've been thinking about a lot, is just like, how do we get this out there for people to experience themselves, because it was an amazing thing, and a lot of people helped us get there, right? So that's super important for us. But aside from kind of wrapping up the row itself, and all the thank yous due, that's one big part of it that's still an open for us to finish. But besides that, like for me personally, was coming back to work was a big thing, and seeing what the plan is for career there. But for me, I want to get back into my cycling because I missed it. So I'm intending to cycle across Canada at some point in the future. That's my other big goal I've wanted to do for many years. So one of these days I'll be able to find a gap in life where I can do that. But that's on the plan. And then who knows? I've had people say, are you interested in R2AK? Oh, you bet. I know Kramer is too. But yeah, so we'll see. Lots of exciting things. I don't think anything on this scale. I think that it was an appropriate time for all of us in our careers and what we were working on, that it could fit. Yeah. And that's partially why I did it, partially because I was working on getting my green card as a Canadian. Yeah. Working for a big company, it was, I had time, relatively speaking. So, it was easy enough to say, this is a hard project to work on for 2 years while I'm working on the green card, because there's nothing else I can do in the meantime. But now that I have it, who knows? There's a lot of opportunities. So it's for me though, right now, it's about taking the time to, allow things to level out and, just re-baseline.
Right.
Be really, really next.
Yeah. Huh. Mm-hmm. What do you want that baseline to be?
It's hard to know. I mean, that's the thing. For me personally, it's a deep mental challenge as to what I want to do, because I feel an innate responsibility being in a position of ability to do whatever I really want, right? I have a responsibility to do something helpful. So within that scope of what's going to move the needle for society in terms of making something helpful and useful for people, that will improve people's lives, because I mean that's necessary, especially looking in the future, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot of the systems that were working before really aren't anymore. So we got to think about better ways. So
Yeah.
that's where my headspace is at, thinking about the future. But how that ties into everything else, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
It's a baseline.
Okay. No, that's pretty grand though, and I'm glad that you have that in mind. It's how to find your niche in making a difference is really that's awesome. That's a great.
It comes down to, it's just kind of the same thing with looking for teammates. It's passion first, right? What are you actually passionate about doing? And because otherwise you won't be able to do it. It's just you will fail.
Right. Passion first. That's awesome. Well, I think maybe that's a good place to end. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to meeting you. I hope maybe you come over to the start of the R2AK or something.
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to see the team in the boat and follow you guys. That's going to be so exciting. I mean, I already do obviously on Instagram, but it's a fun, exciting thing.
Have you been, well, you were at the Washington 360. I wasn't there for the start of that. I was actually I was supposed to be there for the start of that. Didn't make it. It's a fun event. And just what I didn't clarify with you is that Jake is an old friend. Daniel is an old friend. Jesse, who is now involved with the races, is a friend.
Wow.
I actually, I've known Daniel since 1994.
Wow.
and I was present when Jake came up with the R2AK race idea. So
wow.
I actually married him and his wife, actually. I lucked into that. But
that's amazing.
So it's like family. But to be a part of the race, that, and maybe I hope you feel this from the 360 and hopefully from the transatlantic, that the people you are, quote, competing against actually are sort of family, in the sense of like, you've gotten to know each other and continue those relationships.
That was absolutely true for 360. I mean, it was so warm and welcoming. It was, I'm sure it's the same for R2AK, although I haven't experienced it. It's really fun too, because it's, no teams are really too alike. It doesn't feel so much as a competition as much as a group challenge almost. Like, it's extremely, it's almost more welcoming, if you will. It's great fun. And I think also too, no one takes themselves too seriously, which is also super refreshing, especially
Well, I think everyone working there, Jake and on down, they sort of set that tone. And yet, obviously the endeavor is serious. You all quickly been pinned down on Whidbey Island. I mean, that's a serious situation there.
Oh yeah. We never felt in any danger either. We knew there was support, and we knew that everyone had a ton of experience with all this kind of stuff. So no, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's setting a relaxed tone with a very real degree of seriousness that this is a difficult thing to do. But, with the mindset of, we all know what we're doing.
Yeah, it's great. It makes it worthwhile and fun. Jonathan, thank you. Anything else you wanted to bring up that I didn't touch on?
I think we touched on a lot. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Good.
I mean, so many things to recount. I'm glad we got to take the extra time to do it as well. So
great. Well, I appreciate it, and I look forward. I'll post this up on YouTube so that people can see. I think of it often as like, people can learn from what you've done in your experience, but also I think just enjoy the tale of a grand adventure. I mean, it's wonderful. It really is. So thanks so much for sharing.
My pleasure. Thanks, John.
All right. Looking forward to meeting you in person.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.